Hi, Clutter Fairy fans. This is the Clutter Fairy Weekly for November 1st, 2022. I'm your co-host, Ed Gumnick, and I'm speaking with Gayle Goddard, certified professional organizer and owner of the Clutter Fairy in Houston, Texas.
Hi, everybody. The Clutter Fairy Weekly is the webcast and podcast that digs deep into the clutter that piles up between you and the life you want to be living. We explore the habits and behaviors that lead to clutter, and we suggest strategies to slow the accumulation, reduce the collection, and comfortably manage the stuff we decide to keep.
If you're new to our Zoom meeting, we want to let you know that you can share your comments and questions via the chat feature, and I'll try to make sure Gayle gets to them before we move on to another topic. You can also use the raise hand feature if you'd like to make a comment or ask a question yourself via audio or video. We're also streaming the webcast live on Facebook, so you can share your questions and comments there, and I'll relay them to Gayle. We'll start by recapping last week's weekly Tittle, which was called Start Peeling the Onion. The assignment was to peel the first layer of the onion for an organizing project you're finding difficult to start. Let's hear from our participants in Zoom and Facebook who took off a layer or two this week. Please let us know in the comments. Anna from Sweden shared this comment on last week's show notes on our website. We have started peeling the onion. For my husband and me, one of the onions is clothes. The first subtask is the sock drawers. It might sound trivial, but socks have been coming in at a far greater speed than going out. I have worked on mine for an hour and filled one big plastic bag with socks and still haven't gone through all of my socks. Tomorrow, it's my husband's turn. I should perhaps add that we use a lot of hiking socks, so we probably have more categories. Still, it feels ridiculous. Thanks for the lovely weekly webcasts.
First, you're welcome. We love doing these webcasts, and helping all around the world is so gratifying. Shout out to the podcast listeners this week. We've added listeners in Hong Kong and Iceland recently, so thanks for joining us. Now, to Anna's point about the socks, any collection of favorite things can easily get out of control, and going through them can be a process that takes a few passes. So first, peeling the onion is looking at the whole collection and seeing what can be easily subtracted first. So have fun with that. Sounds like she's not quite done yet, and see if you can't go back for a second round before you declare it complete. I hope your husband does as well as you did.
You know, people had a lot of fun with the onion metaphor, and Marsh reported in her Tittle report that she sent through the website. She went and got an actual red onion to serve as her sort of totem while she was working on a garage project.
Awesome.
And it worked. The power of the onion gave her great success. I'm not going to read her whole thing.
But that's great.
But yeah. Dawn shared in the comments, I'm reeking of onion. I started with a plan and attacked it with a vengeance. On Thursday, I spent over 8 hours both upright and on the couch, quiet projects, making incredible progress. I spent some time Friday through Sunday, but to a lesser degree. The areas touched were my office, the living room, the kitchen, and the closet. There was a large host of items which needed to go in other places. This was prompted by one, being so exhausted from the flooring project a year ago, July, things I hadn't gotten to. Two, having a dream of what I wanted things to look like aesthetically, as well as considering usefulness. And three, being tired of things sitting around as they were and knowing that it could be better, much better.
I'm so glad that you tackled it so ferociously. It sounds like you really went after it, and you will have that energy and focus level will ebb and flow for you. So you probably won't be able to stay teeth sunk in like that for long periods of time. But you can certainly come and go to it, which is hence the peeling of the onion metaphor, right? You peel a layer, you walk away, you recover, you peel a layer, you walk away, you recover. And so it sounds like you made a big dent recently, and that's fabulous. And you can take a break and come back to it again. And in the Clutter Fairy world, as we've said many times, anything counts. So it doesn't matter how much you do. It just matters that you do something and make a little headway. And for you, sounds like you made a lot of headway. So congratulations. You can be proud. And I'm sure the house looks so much better for all the effort you've made. Good for you.
M reports, I managed to get 4 full trash bags and a carload of stuff out of my garage.
Woohoo.
Most of it belonged to others whom I finally managed to convince to come for their things.
Come and get it. Right. I am not your storage unit. Please come and take it away. Good for you.
Indoors, I used the onion method, but only getting to the first layer. And that's all, that was all the assignment was. So you succeeded.
You did it. And that's
Connie,
it's all about getting started, right? Like peeling the first layer of the onion is just stepping into the project and starting to work on it. And so if you got that done, you are off dead center. you're off being frozen in place. And that is the important point to be made there, is that you made the effort and got in motion.
Connie says, I sort of did. Making room for plants indoors meant rearranging things and putting things in bags to take where they belong.
Mm-hmm. That's step one, baby. You can circle back and take those bags and take them where they're supposed to go. And the plants can come in another day. And that's all about, that's what any project is. It's just the steps, right? And so you guys are talking about doing the first steps, which is great.
Paula says, I blew off the Tittle and continued working on papers. Shredded a bunch of unnecessary financial papers. I'm hoping to consolidate everything into one box. Also, I decluttered a storage unit. Yay. She threw that in there almost as an afterthought. And to me, it's like you buried the lead.
Yeah, you buried the lead on that one. Right? You decluttered the storage unit. You did great. And working on papers is actually peeling the onions. If you were doing steps of the process of getting your papers under control, you're just it's not the first layer of the onion. You're farther along. If you're to the shred part, it means you've already made some paper decisions and now you're just having to process them. So you're just farther along. Your onion is smaller.
Right?
Yeah. Good job.
Okay. Eventually you'll be peeling a cocktail onion.
Right. That's a good visual. Never thought of that one before.
Jane in California says, peeling the Christmas decor onion has started.
Oh, good.
This past week, a second box of decor not used in many years was donated.
Yay! Perfect timing. That's perfect timing. Now it can go and be donated and put out as people start to race towards Thanksgiving, the end of November, and they start thinking about putting Christmas up, and your stuff will be ready to go home with somebody else. That's awesome.
And that's what she said. She said there were 4 boxes initially and now just 2. And she said, my local donation centers are accepting it now.
That's great. Good for you. Good for you.
Karen says, gave away a large garbage bag of clothes, washed and folded, to a neighbor collecting clothes for 2 Nigerian families new to the States.
There you go. Straight into somebody's hands. Perfect.
Sam says, I decluttered a storage unit last week. I was supposed to do another, but it's raining. So that's 2 storage units and 2 garages that I know of from people in our group this week. It was a very productive week.
Tis the season. Tis the season. The weather is conducive to storage units and garages right now, for sure. So it's not too hot. It's not too cold. Now it's the perfect time to be out there in those outdoor spaces, trying to dig out. So good for you. You guys are rocking it right now. Awesome.
C says, gathered papers from one area, sorted, trashed most, and shredded a lot. We'll start on next bunch this weekend.
Isn't it amazing the ratio of keep to toss? Like when you really start going through paperwork.
Oh yeah,
you keep 3 things and you throw away 300 things. It's really quite amazing.
Even if it's a really rich pile of paper, you're going to keep about 1 out of every 50 pieces or something in a really dense, valuable stack of paper.
Yeah.
CJ says, remove first layer of onion in the living room miscellaneous pile. Needed to remove the pile by Sunday to place a free couch from a friend that had to be received that day if we wanted them to deliver it. There's nothing quite like a pending delivery to get you into motion.
To spur you into action. Good job. And for the effort and the work that you did, you got a free couch out of it. So awesome.
Ended up sorting into broad categories in bins to set aside to detail sort later, as well as clearing the path to get the couch in.
Good job putting them in bins so that they stay contained and you can focus on one bin at a time. And then, don't get used to the bins as, landscape furniture. You
Well,
want them to look like pending projects to you and keep going back to them.
and I would suggest to CJ that if you didn't already do so, put some labels on those bins. Just,
Oh, good idea.
tape a piece of paper that says what's in this bin.
Yeah, what the category was.
What your broad categories were, so that it's easy to pick up when you're ready to start
Go
again.
find some scrap paper and get out the Sharpie and scribble a label real fast and throw it on the top. Good point.
Emily Sue said, one action I did for my onion peeling is continue making a list of belongings in a spreadsheet and going through the list one item at a time, designating them as to keep or to donate. I realized halfway through it that I have a lot of things to decide about, but at least I worked on the list.
Okay. You should come back and tell us how it's going. And because making the list seems like an added step, but maybe it works for you because you are more comfortable looking at a written form of the decision-making process. And so I'd be curious to hear some more about that later as you populate the list and get through it and start making decisions from it. Come and tell us about your process a little bit more.
Well, and I could see where if you were aiming to keep, a certain target number of items in a category,
that might be how you do it.
Doing the thought, doing it as a thought process first might help.
Yeah.
Also, I would certainly sympathize with someone who just thinks any project is better managed with a spreadsheet.
Right?
I love me some spreadsheets.
Right. Exactly. There you go. So if it makes you happy, I just want to hear how it works for you and how the process evolved for you. So let me know. Keep us up to date.
And this was just an astonishingly productive week for the Clutter Fairy community. Anita says,
true.
I finally cleared my new dance room floor by putting all kinds of stuff, starting with a file cabinet, out at the curb with a free sign.
And it disappeared, I'm sure. That's awesome. That's a lot. I'm so proud of you guys. You guys are really making things happen out there for yourself. 'Tis the season.
Leela said, I had a conversation with my husband and tried to peel a layer from his piles, but he would not let me. I think he's the stinky onion. Haha, just joking.
But it is hard to do somebody else's pile. It is, it is a little like emotionally threatening to someone else for you to get all up in their grill. And so you have to remember the flip side of it. What if somebody walked over to your pile and started making choices about your socks instead of, you making your own sock choices? I would suggest that you can help him by offering to sort, but not throw out or make any decisions. So if you can say to him, I'm willing to take this pile and sort it for you, and then hand you a pile of things and say, I think this is recycling. Do you agree? Yes or no? And then you can give him piles of decisions to make, but you've done some of the initial sorting work. It takes a little bit of the labor out of it. It gives him less decisions to make because he's making one choice about a whole stack of related things. For instance, I think this is all related to our taxes. Do you agree? That kind of stuff. He may or may not like the invasion of you going through his things, but it might be a level of work that he's willing to accept. If you agree to not throw out or make any decisions about anything, you're just going to sort and categorize for him and then show him the piles that you've made and let him make decisions about the piles. He might be okay with that. You can try it. Don't do it without asking him first, but tell him that you won't make any decisions. You won't throw anything out. You're just going to sort and then let him look at the sorted piles and see if that allows him to participate, allows him to let you participate in his paperwork. And if he's still uncomfortable, then you just got to let it go. You got to then offer to contain it in some way. If it's spread out or it's annoying you, then you can negotiate about how his unsorted pile can be stored. And that may be as far as you can go. Got to let him come to it himself.
Rejoice says, I finished, I think, scanning my late brother's newspaper bylines. which was a
Oh,
huge block, even if not a huge pile. I think I finally found a place that can give TLC to my mom's 1982 Mixmaster.
uh,
Made a list of all the things that I want/need to do this week, but I haven't gotten as far as I'd like. I think you should go easier on yourself, because it sounds like you knocked off 2 challenging things already.
and spend a lot of emotional energy trying to deal with your brother's byline stuff. So climbing that mountain, it isn't physically difficult, but it was an emotional climb. And so it takes a lot of energy to face that stuff and do it. And if you did, just call it a win. Don't, we all get judgmental about, we're looking at the stuff that we've done and we turn around and look at all the stuff that's not done. And then we get all twitchy about what's left to do or what we didn't finish, and immediately forgetting about all the work that we just did. So I'm going to tell you to turn back around and look at the stuff that you just did and be proud of yourself instead, that you got that much done. Whether it was enough or not is sort of beside the point. The point is, instead of getting nothing done, you got something done, and you can point to it and be proud of having accomplished it. So good for you.
Catastrophe. I'm not sure I'm pronouncing that right, but I think I've just said catastrophe before. And I think since the second A is capitalized, it's catastrophe. Says, I'm loving my new labeler, fully customizable and Bluetooth printer all in one device.
Ooh.
I would be delighted if you would share information about the brand and model, because it'd be nice to get a good recommendation to share with people on that.
Yeah.
I have
absolutely.
a little label maker, but actually typing, it's a simple, cheap battery operated thing. And
I bet the buttons are really small for your hands.
The buttons are microscopic. And then when you spit out the label, it's nearly impossible to get the backing off of it. It's crazy difficult.
It doesn't split in the middle?
No. Yeah, maybe I should look for a replacement tape that split.
Yeah, you need a tape that actually has 2 splits in the middle so you can peel it off from the center.
Let's move on, and I'll come back with comments as time permits.
Yeah, we have a lot of material.
We do have a lot to talk about on our main event today. Every home contains at least a few items we keep, even though they serve no practical purpose and can be awkward to display, difficult to maintain, keep clean, etc. We're talking about the sentimental stuff. Even when we want to let go, we get sidetracked down the path of memories, emotions, and long-held beliefs. Today, we're going to explore sentimental clutter and offer tips for balancing sentimental value with our real-world conditions of time, space, and resources.
So for this week's topic, we wanted to get an idea of what your keepsakes look like. So we asked our audience about the kinds of things that they held on to for no other reason than sentimental value. And here were the top vote getters. These are going to be fascinating. So the top vote getter was printed photographs at 81%. So 81% of the respondents have printed photographs. 71% have personal letters. And I have some of those too. 48% have birthday cards. Guilty. 54% have jewelry. I have some jewelry too. I have some of my mother's jewelry. 53% have handmade items. And this category is very fraught with, little kids, things that they made in school or when the kids are young and they make handmade gifts for you. So there's a lot of that there. 52% have yearbooks. 51% have digital photographs. And 41% have travel souvenirs, which I thought was fascinating. But the most surprising survey result for us was this discovery that 34% of our survey respondents keep locks of hair, and an astonishing 23% of you have a collection of baby teeth. So, okay.
I was just astonished at that number.
I know, right? Like one out of 5 have baby teeth collections at the house. It's like, wow, it's a little rattling jug of DNA sitting in your house. So other interesting things people reported keeping included a 50-year-old wedding gown, saddles and horse tack, pet ashes. I have pet ashes at my house, and antique seeds. That was an interesting one. I thought that that you would have antique seeds. How cool.
Well, they were from I don't remember who contributed that, but they were from mom. Mom had, had a garden and had kept seeds and handed them off. And the person who responded about that said they, were hoping to put in a garden and grow those seeds. Well, now that never happened, and they're now many years old.
Right.
Of course, they've sprouted seeds that they found in the pyramids, so I wouldn't give up on the seeds.
Yeah, you might be able to get something to happen out of them, right? So clearly anything and everything can become a keepsake. And here's how you've expressed the feelings that are associated with those items. Items with sentimental value are very emotionally fraught. There's a very large emotional burden that comes with some of the items that you own. Feelings about sentimental items run the gamut from a sense of obligation to a deep, almost spiritual connection to things. Sometimes what was important to a previous generation gets passed down as an obligation to the next generation, whose memories around the item are not firsthand. On the other hand, an original owner of something will have a much stronger memory tied to the object, and so their attachment to it is deeper and more emotionally rich. One viewer expressed this idea of obligation perfectly. Audience member Adele said it this way: "It isn't so much a matter of me being sentimental about things as it is about me feeling obligated to keep things because I should have a sentimental attachment. As an example, I keep my grandmother's diamond ring. It's a cheap, tiny yellow diamond and maybe worth 30 to 50 bucks at most, and has no value to me, sentimental or otherwise. I don't want it. I never wanted it, but I guess I'm supposed to want it." This is a perfect example of the phenomenon I see sometimes in which sentimental attachment is somehow inherited or pressed upon a person by convention, societal expectations, or by other people's feelings or wishes or desires. The things that we keep most often come to represent the people with whom we have associated those things. So we may feel like we're being disloyal or breaking a trust by parting with them. Those memories we attach to an object always involve other people, right? So letting go of an object gets associated with that person also. That makes it very hard to let go of things and not feel like we're letting go of the associated person at the same time. Now, I need to step in here and to say, even though our show titles today says declutter stuff with sentimental value, we don't mean that all keepsakes are clutter and need to go. We're covering this today because sentimental items are often a source of clutter. People's emotions about an object prevent them from choosing what's right for them. Keepsakes become clutter when it stands in the way of something that you want to be, do, or have in your life. We want you to have the objects you want, respect them and honor them, and still have good living space for your current life. Keepsakes have a place in our lives, and there's a balance to reach between how much memory items to keep versus how much stuff we need in our spaces to live our life. If we could look at our stuff through a stranger's eyes, we might see a lot of things that possess no practical or monetary value. But it's easy to look at our own collections through those filters of memory and nostalgia, and to rationalize our attachments until our spaces are full to overflowing with physical reminders of our past. And you have to navigate this process according to your personality, your items, and your home. We all want keepsakes in our lives. They're valued trail markers along the way. The question is, how many are really adding to your quality of life? And when does hanging on to too many keepsakes start to detract from your quality of life? Let's talk about personality as a filter for keepsakes. Are you super sentimental about everything in your life? You might be prone to sentimentality if any of these behaviors sound familiar. You keep the movie ticket from every movie you've ever seen or every performance you've ever attended. You keep anything with your mother or father's handwriting on it. You keep any piece of paper your child ever scribbled on, and boy, have I seen a lot of that in my day. You keep clothes you wore in high school and you're nearing retirement. You keep all the photos you've ever snapped, even the blurry ones. You keep every Christmas or birthday card you've ever received. You keep the inventory of a long closed business in storage somewhere. You get the idea. If this tendency is part of your personality, then you're keeping a lot of keepsakes in your living space. If you're over 30, you're probably crowding out your current life with memories of your past life, and it's becoming a problem for you. When the keepsakes outweigh the current use items, it starts to get difficult to keep the past and the present separate. and to lay your hands on current stuff when you need it. The metaphorical and literal weight of the past starts to impact your quality of life in a negative way. So while keeping memories is supposed to make you feel good, they actually start to take away peace of mind in the present. So let's talk about the items themselves. How many and how much you keep depends in part on the materials we're talking about. Storing lots of photos and cards is easier than storing 30 years of clothing. A collection of motorcycles takes more room than a collection of teacups. When you're looking at sentimental items, size matters. The larger or bulkier the item, the faster they're going to clog up your living space. You may need to filter more of the larger items and fewer of the smaller items as you decide what keepsakes to say. Finally, let's talk about your space. Do you live in an assisted living one-bedroom apartment with 250 square feet? Or a 4-bedroom house that's 2 stories that's 3,000 square feet? What fits in the 3,000 square foot house cannot be squeezed into the 250 square foot apartment. What started out in 1,600 square feet won't move to a 1,000 square foot home either. Your space has a cubic volume in which to fit your belongings, both your keepsakes and the stuff for current use. So the smaller the space, the less room there is to surrender to the past. What could you get away with keeping in 3,000 square feet will not fly in a home that's half the size. So hopefully you're following that logic. Your personality, your items, and the limitations of your space set the parameters according to which you have to filter your keepsakes. If you start with the premises that you want to be able to live comfortably and function easily in your space, you need to be able to find all your current use things effortlessly, and you must be able to clean and maintain your space with ease, then it's clear that you need to allocate most of your space for your current life. You can only set aside a smaller portion of your home for storing and displaying keepsakes. And what does that look like in reality? If you're super sentimental and you live in 250 square feet, you're in for a painful purge. If you're downsizing your space by 40%, your purge project will be a little bit less brutal, but it's still going to be significant. If you've been overwhelmed with sentimental items in your current space, you've got 2 adjustments to make. You have to dial back the keepsakes to a level that means they stop interfering with how you function in your current life. And that means deciding first what portion of your space is okay to store keepsakes in. And then second, you need to filter those keepsakes until they fit into that portion of your house. I know this may sound like an impossibly practical approach to a very sentimental situation, but if you want to maintain a balance in your house between the space you're using and the memories you're storing, this is the challenge you have to face. You don't have to change your personality. You can still be sentimental. You just have to set parameters for sentimental things so they don't take over your life. So I'm going to leave you with some tips to help you make decisions about what to keep and what to let go of. Hopefully these will make it easier for you as you rebalance the amount of keepsakes you store. Here's a technique that we mention often that works especially well for large or bulky items, which is take a picture. Sometimes a photograph of the item is enough to let the real large object go. A picture of the kid's large poster project or of the popsicle stick diorama, we all had one of those in our lives, or of your favorite coat from high school, or the dining table from your grandmother's house that's too large for anybody's house now. Those photographs become a way for you to keep the memory and keep it alive and not be managing the object itself. You can also try to keep a representative sample of each sentimental category. So you have all kinds of things with your mother's handwriting on it, from grocery lists to birthday cards. The birthday cards are a better representative sample of your mom and your relationship with her than those grocery lists. So keep the sentimental items that are richer in feeling for you and filter out the rest. In general, keep the best example of anything sentimental and filter out their lower quality choices. And the strategy of keeping a representative sample can be adapted as a proactive strategy for filtering on the front end when you're first touching everything. I know it's easier to keep all instead of making any choices, but not making any choices is why you're drowning in stuff now. You can instead choose to filter as you experience things instead of choosing after the pile is huge. when you come home from that vacation, for example, and you're unpacking, you can filter out all the flyers and the schedules and the tickets and the handouts right then. That's a lot of paper that's now waste paper, and a few pieces will serve as a reminder of the great adventure that you had.
It's funny though, the moment you come back from the trip is a tough time, because you're still sort of reveling in the fun or the adventure or the nightmare, whatever it was. If it's a nightmare, it's probably easy to get rid of the stuff. But you know, it all still feels very meaningful.
And you probably have, there's a certain amount of stuff when, if people who travel are big planners and they do a lot of research in advance, then they end up taking paper with them that's related to their research, and they have lots of itineraries and support for the things that they're going to go do. Then you pick up paper along the way. And so there's still some peeling the onion process that can be done, I think. If you have research on going to a specific place, and then you go to that place and come home with the flyer from that place, then your research becomes not important, and the flyer is the better choice out of the list. So you can still filter. I think you can still filter some, and maybe it has to rest for a week or 2 weeks before you do it. So then you make a pile of that travel paper and go stick it to the side and come back to it. The trick is to not put it in a corner, shove it underneath a box, and then don't come back to it for 15 years. You do have to circle back earlier. The last tip I have here is take your favorite parts of a collection and display them. Your favorite picture of your childhood home would be great hung on the wall, and then you're honoring that keepsake. Then you don't have to keep so many photos of that house, because the best one is out for you to look at and enjoy all the time. You can even frame or put in a shadow box some of the more 3D objects for display. I've seen lots of framed baby gowns and ticket collages out there. If you're a crafty person, then that kind of project is more possible. There's a greater possibility you can make it happen. If you're not a crafty person, maybe you have a crafty friend who might take some of your objects and make them into a shadow box display. But if you don't have that calling, if you don't have that skill set to make art out of your keepsakes, then coming up with a better way a way that you're more likely to do it is the more important point here. To take your keepsakes, your collection, get them in a photo album, get them in a box that you can pull down and look at, contain them in some way that you can go and touch them again. Even if it's not a crafty display, it's still a display that you can go and interact with them, I think is the more important point. There's all kinds of keepsakes that are hiding in corners somewhere that nobody ever looks at. And then their kids have to go through and pull out all the stuff out of the closet and go, what is all this stuff? And they have no idea. Better that you find the favorite picture of your childhood home and hang it on the wall. However, you can do that easily. And then you get to look at it, and somebody knows why it's important to you, because you can explain it to them when you're standing there looking at the picture. Look, this is my childhood home. This is why it's hanging on the wall. The important point is keeping a vast collection that you never look at and give no honor to doesn't make any sense to me. And this is something that Peter Walsh talked about all the time on the shows that he was on, which was give honor to the things that you feel are keepsakes enough and important enough to value and hang up and display, so that you can enjoy them. And there's a reason why you've kept them, because they have become part of your decor and become part of your life. Okay.
Emily Sue, on the subject of spreadsheets, of the spreadsheet she's working at, Emily Sue says, we're moving and need to really purge. I'll get back to you on those details.
Okay, thanks.
She loves spreadsheets too, she says. And Dawn chimed in as well and said, I'm with you, Ed, on the spreadsheet. I created one for every room, every box, and I'm keeping track of the hours, more or less. The fun goal of seeing where I can get in a year.
Oh, cool.
You know, it's for spreadsheet oriented people, it's the equivalent of the checked off.
Yeah. You're controlling the data.
And also it is that durable proof of what you accomplished.
Right. We talked about that, tracking your results so that you can see how much you got done, and so you don't forget when the space is blank how much used to be there. And if that effort helps you stay spurred and motivated to keep going, keeps you running forward, that's the important point. So good. Spreadsheet as motivator. We like it.
Janice, who's with us on Facebook, says peeling the onion metaphor is the best mantra.
Right.
And Connie, trying to take the onion metaphor just that one step too far, says it's time to saute those layers.
So I think that sauteing the layers can be taking the peeled parts of the onion and sending them off to donations. You can think of that as sauteing the onions.
Well, there was also a comment. I'm not sure where it is, but there was also a comment about cards that had been saved going into the fireplace. So that's sort of sauteing the peeled layers.
Right. And certainly breaking them down like sauteing wood. Okay, y'all are cracking me up today.
Catastrophe says, I keep saying I'll be more productive with these papers if I had a filing cabinet, but not the massive industrial business one, which is used in the garage, and not either of my vintage ones, because I can't use them until after the restoration projects of them I have planned. Face palm.
Right.
That sounds like a yak shaving story if I've ever heard one.
Right, exactly. Frankie says hi. Frankie is joining the podcast now today. He's sitting on the chair there. He came to announce himself. So I think I love that this is one of those we create barriers when we don't want to face chores. And I need to use these vintage file cabinets that I'm going to restore someday. And so I can't make movement on my paper project because my filing cabinets aren't ready. And if I was in your house working with you, I'd be saying, yeah, but what's the solution for today? So the solution for today is you get a file box and you start working in the file box so that you start working on the papers. And when, the file cabinet project ever gets done and the file cabinet moves in and it's fabulous and beautiful, then you can take things out of your file box and put them into the file cabinet. But in the meantime, you can't let that stall your project. You're living with the papers, the file cabinets in the garage. So you're being impeded by the papers that are in your house right now, and facing them and doing something with them that you consider temporary is fine. So get a portable file box. And
some of those cardboard ones.
Yeah, you can get cardboard ones. You can get plastic ones that take hanging folders. Like you can prep it so that they can be lifted out of the file box and put into the file cabinet immediately when you get the file cabinet project done. Yeah. But in the meantime, yeah, you got to get on the paper because it's not going anywhere and you're living with the paper. So yeah, this is an example of I can't do A until B and C and D are done, which effectively stalls you from doing A and prevents you from getting any motion happening. And I'm always going to be in front of you saying, okay, but what's today's solution? How can we solve that problem today? If B and C and D can't be done yet, then we need to go around B and C and D and do, E, F, and G in order to make movement on this project instead of being 100% stalled. So go get some file boxes and start doing.
Sam asked, is there an example of a decluttering spreadsheet that someone could share? I think that I could use help with what categories to create. Might have to see if we can track anything down along those lines.
Yeah, that's a good question.
I have not seen one in my searches, but I'll bet someone has one out there. And actually, Dawn has offered to share hers one-on-one, but we'll see if we can find one that someone has published. Leslie on Facebook commented that she has at least 9 sets of pet cremains.
Oh, you have your own little burial collection, huh? Yeah. I had the same. I've taken cremains and put them in the ground, and I have some here. Like I can see one right there that is they come in a little box, and it's like, okay, I'll just have to go and bury them someday, but I'm not ready to do that yet.
Yeah, it's tough.
Right? It's a small collection.
Well, and you worry about, if I bury it, you're in a rental
Right. Yeah,
house. So you don't
yeah,
want to bury it in the backyard of your rental house, because then it's left behind. But so maybe if there's someone who, some dear friend who, is pretty much entrenched where they are for the foreseeable future, maybe you bury
right.
it and see if you could bury it in their backyard.
I can go bury it in Anne's backyard.
There you go. Beth and Rich, my sister and brother-in-law have a pet cemetery in the backyard.
Right. There you go.
And my dog loves to wander to that corner of the yard. And we always say that he's communing with the ancestors.
He's talking to the spirits of the graveyard.
Yes. Abby says, I have some saved cards and use them as bookmarks. And that's a great way to recover something, something that was sort of borderline clutter. If you give it that useful purpose, if you need that many bookmarks, you can keep them around and still see them and enjoy them, and they're also doing something useful for you.
Yeah, people that collect bookmarks usually have
1,000,
50 of them, and
right.
They're not all getting used. So you got to come up with a solution that goes with the volume that you're trying to keep as well.
Right. Catastrophe says Bluetooth, the label maker that she mentioned is a Bluetooth label maker, Vixic, VIXIC D1600, rechargeable label printer. And she said it has an app, so you can, and that's great, because as we were saying, the keyboard on some of the little handheld label makers it's so tiny, yeah. And you can, if you could do it in an app, probably save yourself a lot of time. So I'm gonna she shared a link with me, which I will put in the show notes.
Okay. Thanks for sharing.
Leela says, I have my daughter's hair from her first haircut taped into her baby book.
Right.
Abby also shared, I gave my yearbooks to the reunion teams at the school for cutting up photos for the reunion parties to help visualize someone as they were. Tila, I hope I'm pronouncing that right, said, I showed my teens their baby teeth and they thought it was gross. So I finally threw them out.
They thought it was gross. There was in Victorian era, there was a practice of making jewelry out of people's hair, out of deceased people's hair. They would, weave very intricate pieces of jewelry out of it. And so you could end up wearing your deceased loved one's hair, which came and went in fashion. And some of those things are collected now. And I can't believe that the hair is still present, but it is. It's really amazing. And people did really intricate, elaborate works out of the people's hair. So, maybe we're not as bad as Victorian England.
Well, seeing those results, I really didn't expect the numbers we saw on locks of hair and baby teeth. But then when I saw those numbers, I thought, well, there's a lot of cultural history behind these practices. Like Catholics, Catholics venerate saints, and and there are relics. What are, the original meaning of the term relic was something that has a physical connection to the life of a saint. And they're first order relics, which I think are actual parts of the body parts, yes, body parts. Yes. And then, I think I'm probably getting this wrong because it's been a long time since I read anything on this, and then I think maybe second order relics are like things they wore or things they owned, or, I don't remember exactly, but that goes back probably, that goes back most of 2,000 years, that practice.
Right. Well, and I think that there's, the thing about hair, when moms finally go and take their kids to get their first haircut, I think there's a lot of sentiment around we're clipping off a part of our child for the first time. There is a lot of emotion for mothers in particular around that. I think, and it's true for every mother that goes off and gets their kids haircut. It's like, oh, their curly little adorable locks are on the floor. Oh my gosh. And so that doesn't surprise me.
But it's really interesting. And I wonder if people, look at it later and think about what is it? what does it really mean to me? What do I really believe about this? I think it's a really interesting thing. Rejoice said, my sentimental clutter rating is influenced by how much closet space it takes up. Family photos, audio/video, letters/genealogy. And of course, we wouldn't be, if every one of us had a warehouse where we could keep our sentimental clutter, we wouldn't be having this conversation. It would just be like, yeah, keep everything you want, but we don't.
And if we did, we wouldn't be seeing it. It would just be stored. And that circles back to, you want to be able to, if you have that much of an emotional attachment, you want to be able to honor it and see it and experience it. And you can't display huge collections. You can display small collections. And so you can display representative samples of large collections. And so it's not practical to think of putting all of it on the wall or having it all out or having it all on display. And how much you store that nobody's looking at and nobody's experiencing becomes an issue of your surrendering space for something that no one's touching.
Yeah. Here's a great question from Sam. What if we want to move forward from a season of life, like closing a chapter in a book? I mean, when the season of that person in one's life is over.
I think that's a great sort of point of view to stand in, that this season of your life has passed, and now it's time to go through the stuff that represented that season and get it down to, so this is the collection of things that I want to represent that season. When you're living the season, then it takes up a lot of space. But when it's a season that has passed, then it makes sense to pare it down to the representative sample, to get the small collection of things that remind you of that season, that you can then store and put away and move on into the new season. And so I think that's a great way to look at it. When someone has passed out of your life for whatever reason, death, divorce, relocation,
or just growing apart.
Right. Then, keeping a representative sample of what that season, what that relationship was like, is a way to recognize that it was there for you and it was part of your life. And now it's not part of your life. And so that piece can go in a corner and go on the shelf or go on the wall. And you can have that little bit that represents them. And then you can move on to go forward to what's currently and active in your life. And we talk about that a lot with, I used to do this sport. I used to do this hobby. I used to hang out with these people. I used to be a part of this group. I used to work at this company. I used to have this business. We all have things that come and go in our life. And the older we get, the bigger that list gets of things that have come and gone. And so keeping everything related to that thing that's gone is not necessary. And the list is going to get longer. And so you might as well make space for all the things that are going to have gone past in your life into the next thing. You're going to have an ever growing, as you get older, ever growing pile of things that were part of your life and now aren't. So keeping a small representative sample and moving on to the next phase of your life is going to be an important skill to learn.
Okay, this is the point in the webcast every week where I have to say, there are so many incredible, great comments. There's an amazing conversation going in the chat, and we won't get to it all, but Gayle and I will both read it offline so we can come back to any topics that we didn't get to.
Okay.
I think we should talk about next week. Next week, we are going to have another Ask Us Anything show, and sorry, I have lost my notes. We're going to attempt to answer the question, how many unfinished projects is too many? We'll also discuss micro versus macro organizing styles. And we're going to revisit the 5 most common organizing mistakes, because that's a topic we haven't talked about in quite a while. And we're going to do we'll do a shorter form of not the full,
not the
we
whole
won't
presentation.
spend the whole day on that,
Okay.
but we will revisit those because it's been such a long time since we went through those that there are probably a lot of members of our audience who haven't heard us talk about that anytime recently.
Yeah.
Why don't you share the tittle?
Okay, so this week's tittle is called More Than a Feeling, ? This week's assignment is to examine your attachment to something that you're keeping only for its sentimental value. You want to identify an item that you keep purely for sentimental reasons, not because it meets your standard of beauty or usefulness, or because the item itself sparks joy for you. Write down a few words or phrases to describe the item. Where, when, and how did it come into your possession? Make a few notes about what this item means to you, especially in terms of the people, places, events, or other memories that the item evokes. Reflect on whether your feelings about the object have changed in the time you've possessed it. How do you feel about displaying the item in your home? Consider whether you would be comfortable taking a photograph as a way to preserve the memory without keeping the item, or whether you'd be willing to gift the item to a family member or a close friend. And after reflection, are you ready to decide that this item is an irreplaceable treasure, or did it turn into clutter as time has gone by? We know this is a tough exercise, so you may still not be ready to make that call. That's okay. The point of the exercise is to get you to explore and understand your feelings about specific sentimental items. And let's see how you do.
Okay. Do you have a final thought on sentimental clutter?
You know, I always have more to say.
I thought you would.
So dealing with your sentimental clutter is mostly about reducing your existing backlog, but your day-to-day habits continue to affect your future accumulation of sentimental clutter. If you don't adjust your habits of accumulation, you're setting yourself up to build another pile. So I encourage you to take a careful look at how you filter the physical evidence of your experiences as you have them. Are there places in your life where a photo would effectively stand in for a physical memento? Could you pull a representative sample of the materials related to the event right after you live it? What about posting to a Pinterest page to collect memories in a space-saving way? Or consider writing a blog or journal to memorialize these special moments. Your memories are precious, but so is your present life. And we want you to be able to treasure the past without it crowding you out of living the best life you can right here and right now. We would look forward to hearing your comments on it.
Yes, we do. Okay, if you are watching us live, watching this on YouTube, we'd love for you to join us live. To get notifications about upcoming events, we invite you to join the meetup group by visiting cfhou.com/meetup. You can also follow us on Facebook by visiting cfhou.com/Facebook, or subscribe to our mailing list by visiting cfhou.com/subscribe. We especially want to encourage people to join our mailing list because it seems to be the most consistently reliable way for people to get announcements of next week's survey. And we continue to do a survey each week. We've been having so much fun with that, and we're just getting incredible
great
response.
Material.
Yeah. Wonderful things to talk about. So join that mailing list. We'd love to hear from you, so please send us your questions, comments, and topic suggestions on YouTube, Facebook, or anywhere else that you find us. You can always reach us through our website at clutterfairyhouston.com.
We look forward to you every week coming and listening to us talk, and we will be here next week with our short question list, and we can't wait to talk to you about it. We'll see you next week.
Bye-bye.
Bye.